Coffee cup clue, a night that shattered lives. It was a stormy night in the small town of Crestwood. The streets were empty, except for the dim glow of a roadside diner where Detective Alan Pierce sat alone. His eyes scanned a case file, the unsolved disappearance of a young woman named Emily Carter. The case had haunted him for months, with no leads, no suspects, just silence. At exactly 11:47 p.m., the diner door creaked open. A tall man in a black coat entered, dripping wet. He ordered black coffee, sat near the window, and seemed unusually restless. Alan's instincts sharpened. Something about him didn't fit. The waitress brought the man his coffee. As Alan glanced at the steaming cup, he noticed something chilling, a lipstick stain on the rim. The man hadn't touched it yet, raced. Emily had been last seen wearing that exact shade of crimson red. Alan stayed calm, pretending not to notice. But when the man excused himself to the restroom, carefully turned the cup, confirming his fear, etched faintly on the ceramic, barely visible, were scratched letters. GLP. The diner lights flickered. The storm outside grew louder. Knew this wasn't coincidence. It was a message from Emily. She had been there. The man wasn't just a stranger, he was the key. When the man returned, Alan confronted him subtly, questioning his presence in town. The man's cold, evasive answers confirmed the worst. As Alan reached for his phone to call backup, the man smirked and whispered, "You're already too late." Then, in a flash, he fled into the storm, leaving behind the only proof, the coffee cup. That night shattered lives. Emily's fate was still uncertain. Alan had finally found the thread that could unravel the whole mystery. And it all began with a simple coffee cup. The power of small details. When we think of solving mysteries or uncovering hidden truths, our minds often rush to the grand evidence. Fingerprints, security footage, or confessions. But more often than not, it is the smallest, almost invisible detail that changes the entire story. A misplaced item, a faint scratch on a surface, or a mark so subtle that most eyes would overlook it. These tiny elements have the power to unlock secrets that remain hidden in plain sight. In the case of the coffee cup clue, the detail that mattered wasn't the man's suspicious behavior or his evasive answers. It was something as ordinary as a lipstick stain on the rim of a coffee cup. To anyone else, it might have looked like a waitress's mistake, a recycled cup, or nothing at all. To Detective Alan, trained to see what others miss, that crimson trace whispered a story louder than words. It was not the stain itself, but the question behind it. How did it get there? Who left it? Small details carry weight because they are unplanned. A criminal may craft alibis, rehearse lies, or hide evidence, but the tiny slip, the forgotten receipt, the smudge of dirt, the faint smell of perfume, cannot always be controlled. That is why investigators obsess over the little things. They know that a single overlooked fragment can topple the strongest illusion of innocence and reveal a truth otherwise buried. Makes small details so powerful is that they demand attention to human instinct. Logic might dismiss them as irrelevant, but instinct lingers. Alan didn't know why he stared at that cup longer than usual, why his pulse quickened when he noticed the shade of red. But his gut recognized that detail is a thread worth pulling. In mysteries, the thread is fragile, but once tugged, it can unravel an entire web of lies. And yet, the irony lies in how easily these details can be ignored. The stain could have been wiped away. The faint HLP scratched into the ceramic could have gone unnoticed if Alan hadn't looked closer. One blink, one careless moment, the clue would have been lost forever. That night proved that sometimes destiny is not written in grand gestures, hidden quietly in the smallest of marks. How ordinary places hide extraordinary secrets. We often pass by the most ordinary places without giving them a second thought. A diner on the corner, a coffee shop buzzing with strangers, or a roadside stop glowing faintly under flickering lights. They appear harmless, familiar, even comforting. History has shown that behind the walls of these ordinary spaces, the most extraordinary secrets can hide. The normalcy of the setting becomes the perfect camouflage for the unimaginable. The diner in Crestwood was no different. To the locals, it was nothing more than a late-night refuge for tired truck drivers and insomniacs. Its neon sign buzzed the same way it had for years. Its smell of coffee and fried food was consistent, and its staff was known by name. Yet on that stormy night, the diner was transformed into the stage of a chilling revelation. What seemed to be a safe, ordinary place became the exact spot where the truth slipped through the cracks in the form of a lipstick stain and a desperate message etched onto porcelain. Ordinary places carry weight because people drop their guard in them. Criminals don't always hide in abandoned warehouses or shadowy alleys. They blend into everyday life. A man sitting at a table with a cup of coffee attracts no suspicion. A conversation in a booth raises no alarm. Is the beauty and the danger of ordinary places. They conceal darkness behind a veil of routine, making the extraordinary feel invisible until it is too late. Even the simplest objects in these settings gain new meaning when the truth is uncovered. A cup is no longer a cup. It becomes evidence. A chair is no longer just furniture. It becomes the seat of someone's final moments before vanishing. The four walls that once symbolized comfort now echo with unasked questions and invisible fear. The diner, in its ordinariness, became an unwilling accomplice, holding within its space a secret no one had expected. What is most unsettling is how we may never know what secrets ordinary places around us hold. The cafe where we laugh with friends, the gas station where we stop for fuel, the park bench we sit on to rest, all of them could have been silent witnesses to events that changed someone's life forever. That night in Crestwood reminded everyone that the extraordinary is not always found in distant, unfamiliar places, but often right in front of us, where we least expect it. The thin line between calm and chaos life often deceives us with its calm. A quiet night, a gentle rain, the hum of neon lights. Everything feels still, dictable, almost safe. But beneath that surface, chaos waits patiently, ready to break through without warning. One moment you are sipping coffee in peace, and the next, you are caught in a storm of fear and uncertainty. That is the fragile balance of life. Calm and chaos are always separated by the thinnest of lines. In Crestwood, night began like countless others. The diner was quiet. The storm outside was only background noise, and Detective Allen appeared to be nothing more than another wary customer reviewing his notes. There was no sign of danger, no hint of darkness. Yet in an instant, illusion shattered. The appearance of a strange man, the sight of the lipstick stain, and the faintly scratched word, CLP, turned a routine evening into a nightmare. Calm wasn't broken gradually, it was ripped apart in a heartbeat. What makes this line between calm and chaos so unnerving is how easily it can shift. A simple object, a cup, a pen, door left ajar, can trigger a chain of events that spiral out of control. One small disturbance in an otherwise ordinary moment can unleash fear that consumes everything. The diner, once a place of warmth and light, suddenly became the center of suspicion, danger, and unanswered questions. It only took seconds for Alan to realize that his quiet night had transformed into something far more sinister. Chaos thrives in those moments because it feeds on surprise. People prepare for storms when they see them coming, but they rarely brace themselves for storms that grow silently in their midst. The stranger's calm demeanor, his polite order of coffee, and his still presence all suggested normalcy, but hidden beneath that quiet exterior was a storm waiting to erupt. Thin line meant that Alan had no time to adjust. He had to act in the very moment calm slipped away. And it is in those sudden transitions that lives are most often shattered. We expect chaos in crime scenes, in battlefields, in emergencies, but we rarely expect it in diners, homes, or familiar streets. That is why its impact is so devastating. Calm lulls us into comfort, but when it collapses, chaos feels sharper, heavier, and more real. That night in Crestwood, the storm outside the diner was nothing compared to the storm that had already entered within. How a single object can change destiny. Objects often sit silently in our lives, unnoticed, important and ordinary. A cup, a pen, a key. These things rarely draw our attention until one moment transforms them into something far greater. Sometimes destiny itself hides inside an object so simple that its power feels almost impossible. A single item, overlooked by many, can become the turning point in a story, altering lives in ways no one could predict. The coffee cup in Crestwood was one such object. To the waitress, it was just part of her routine. To the stranger, it was nothing more than a vessel for a late night drink. But to Detective Allen, it became the most important piece of evidence he had ever encountered. The faint lipstick mark and the desperate word, HELP, carved into its rim carried a weight heavier than any confession. That ordinary cup carried Emily's voice, a silent plea reaching across the unknown, and it demanded to be heard. What makes single objects so powerful is that they outlive the moment. People may lie, faces may vanish, objects remain behind as witnesses. They carry imprints, stains, scratches and marks that tell stories words cannot. A coffee cup could have been washed, discarded, or replaced. Fate kept it on the table that night. It was destiny disguised as ceramic, holding within it the fragile thread that could unravel a mystery. And yet, the true weight of such an object lies not only in what it reveals, but in how it shifts the course of action. Without that coffee cup, Allen might have dismissed the stranger as a weary traveler. That mark, Emily's silent cry, might have remained buried forever. But the cup changed everything. It forced Allen to act, it shattered the illusion of normalcy, and it set in motion a chain of events that could not be undone. That night proved that destiny does not always announce itself in dramatic gestures or loud signs. Sometimes it hides in silence, waiting inside the most unremarkable of objects. A single cup in a quiet diner altered the path of lives, marking the line between ignorance and discovery, between safety and danger, between survival and loss. And once Allen recognized its importance, nothing about that night, or the lives it touched, could ever remain the same.